I'm going to talk about US elections that are coming up in 7 to 8 days' time on 8th of November. It's a topic close to my heart because I've got family in the US, and also I view the role of the US as a protector of, however flawed, as a protector of democracy and um, globally. And these elections, and often elections in any country are called extraordinary, the most critical election in a lifetime, and similar things. But this election is truly extraordinary. It is extraordinary in the sense that it is no exaggeration to say that democracy in the USA hangs in the balance depending on the outcome of this election. Um, Elections in any country can be free and fair when both parties uh, acknowledge defeat when they're defeated and allow for the easy transfer of power. Um, in the US in 2020, that did not happen. And what has since happened has only deepened um, the divide between those who believe in democracy and for those whom no reality exists other than their side winning the election. The GOP, the Grand Old Party, or the Republican Party in the US, has morphed largely into um, a party where there is no room for the other side to win. There is no scenario where the other side can win an election fairly in the eyes of Republican candidates, many Republican candidates. Uh, there is only the only reality that exists is their winning the election. Um, so the Brennan Center has done a study. The Brookings Institute, my apologies, has done a study and found that more than 350 GOP candidates standing in this election uh, does not deny that Joe Biden won the election in 2020 fairly and squarely. And the Brookings Institute um, predicts that half of these candidates will win their election in the upcoming election. Also, a poll of GOP voters show that more than 70% do not care if their chosen candidate is an election denier, uh, and more than 65% of GOP voters um, do not think that January 6th was a problem, or what happened on January 6th was a problem. Now, um, a lot of the candidates standing for election are probably not familiar to us in Australia unless you follow US politics. Um, they're not names that you would have come across or might have followed. So, for example, there is Marjorie Green Taylor, who has said that Democrats are child molesters and have already started killing GOP um, members, in her view, and she has also in the past made claims like the Jewish community is responsible with a space laser to ignite wildfires in California. So this candidate has a very good chance of winning her election and assuming a position of authority in the upcoming House of Congress. There is the election for the House and election for the Senate. Then there is another candidate who's running for the governor of Arizona, the state of Arizona, Kari Lake. She's a born again election denier. She does not believe, once again, that Joe Biden won the election fairly and squarely, and thinks that the news media um, is the enemy, and she's polling very well. And in her view, um, she'll only accept the results. She has quoted this. She'll only accept the results if she wins the election, and she has refused to sort of outline whether she will accept the results if she does not win her election. Then there is Mark Finchem, also standing for the Secretary of State from the state of Arizona, and he's a or member of the Oath Keeper right-wing militia group, which is who are currently being indicted by the Justice Department for their role in January 6th. Mark Finchem also does not believe in any election results other than the one where he wins, and wants to hand count all ballots and ban early voting, and also ban mail in voting. And so just have voting on election day. Then you've got Doug Mastriano, who's Ivy League educated, was in the Gulf War, and does not and believes that abortion is murder, and believes and has frequently uh, associated with QAnon following people, and also followers of an extremely virulent anti-Semitic right-wing website called the Gab, which frequently deals in Holocaust denial. Doug Mastriano is running for the governor of Pennsylvania. Um, so you've got these candidates. There's a sampling of candidates out of the large number of more than 350 who doesn't believe in democracy. For them, there's only one view, that their side can win and the other side can never win. For these people, the Democrats or anyone else who doesn't follow them or follow Trumpism and what that represents is an enemy of the state. They are Untermenschen, as the Nazi Germans used to call the Jews and Russians and others, that they're inhuman. They are they're people who are who hate the country, and 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 essentially should be eliminated. I mean, that is not that is that is the view that is held by um, a large segment of the extreme right wing, and even the supposedly conventional candidates who are standing for governorships, etc., have at various times stated these views. Um, Majority of these candidates also views abortion or any sort of abortion rights as an anathema, and thinks there should be a ban on abortion with very little exception for anything like rape or even the health of the mother or any other such critical issues. Um, Majority of these candidates are for no form of gun control, and um, if anything, wants more guns on the street and on as per the rights of Second Amendment rights, as they feel as per the Second Amendment rights, and notwithstanding the ghastly toll of the number of people killed by guns, by the numerous shootings incidents that has happened across the country. Um, a lot of um, over and above these candidates, there have been overtly racist comments, even for the more conventional ones, one might say Republicans. For example, there's been a lot of focus recently on Kanye West and what he has said, for which he has lost a lot of sponsorships, etc. Very recently, uh, Trump commented about Mitch McConnell's, who's the uh, leader of the Republicans in the Senate, about his wife, and words to the extent that uh, the McConnell must immediately seek help and advice from his China-loving wife, Coco Chow. This was something that Trump said about Elaine Choi, who served in his cabinet as wife of Mitch McConnell. And this was not met with any sort of condemnation from on the Republican side by the head of the House Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, or any other senior Republicans, basically. Um, there is also a view that any support to Ukraine needs to be pegged back by, and there shouldn't be any, as Kevin McCarthy has said, any blank checks to Ukraine. So if the Republicans win control of the House, there would be a significant decline in the help or military aid or other types of aid going to Ukraine, and on the pretext that America cannot afford to help, and 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 this is also further um, aided and abetted by a feeling that Putin, amongst these Republican candidates, that Putin is doing the right thing, and and um, and should be more supported because he's a, because he is Christian, and protecting, in the view of the Republicans, the world from Ukrainian Nazis. This is their view of the world. So Ukraine has some very tough times coming if the GOP takes control um, of the House. Uh, Interestingly, a lot of voters um, see democracy, independent voters even see the democracy is at peril, but it's very hard to gauge how much is it a priority of saving democracy given its peril. Economic imperatives like inflation, cost of living have been heavily sort of focused on by the Republicans, but they don't have any solution of what to do to reduce this other than tax cuts for the wealthy, which incidentally failed spectacularly in the UK. But it seems that it remains to be seen whether fears about the loss of democracy is strong enough amongst a large segment of voters uh, than just kitchen table issues, and kitchen table issues are important. There is historical comparison to this. The Weimar Republic that preceded Nazi rule ultimately fell because of initially hyperinflation through the early mid 1920s, and which was then followed by the Great Depression, um, after American funds um, bailed out the Weimar Republic temporarily for a few years before everything crashed in 1929, and which ultimately gave rise to the Nazi Party and Hitler, and the 30% of the vote in the 1930 elections that the Nazis got. Where things are at currently in the US is similar, but you've got 30 or 40% of the country for whom authoritarianism or dictatorship or a theological rule similar to The Handmaid's Tale is a reality they're willing to accept. There are um, recently in Texas, the Republican Party in Texas the voted to adopt a constitution for the and a vision for the party where there is limited or no government. Essentially, everyone is should be fending for themselves. Um, Everyone should be allowed to carry any number of guns without any limitations, and and government and the role of government is not limited government, but the government should not impede or exist in any way, as per this manifesto, to infringe the rights of citizens, and that's the utopia of a lot of the extreme GOP who are standing for the elections and who will vote for the elections. That there's no role for government. That that the Democrats hate the country and is out to destroy the country, and should therefore be, like Unter mentioned, and should be eliminated. So um, there is also a deep hatred of China and and what communism and socialism um, represents. So Democrats are often accused of being socialists in their views and policies, and by the by this extreme GOP, and and should not be tolerated once again. So traditionally, it's said that the party who is in the White House does not do well in midterm elections. But this election is extraordinary in its consequences because democracy is really at a tipping point where a large part of the country um, does not um, mind if there is a one person authoritarian rule dressed up as something that looks like a democracy but really is not in real sense, where women have no rights around abortion and with no exceptions, where um, where you're allowed to carry any number of guns that you want without any limitations, where the role of government is very limited or non-existent at all, and 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 even social programs like Social Security or Medicare should be cut back. Now, generally, this should terrify any normal citizen, but the reality is that will voters care enough um, about beyond the day to day to see the risk to democracy that is there, and also the bigger risk is for the globe is if such an undemocratic um, sort of evolution of the political system happens in America, then what happens what happens to the globe? Because this version of America will be an isolationist America, similar to what Roosevelt had to deal with prior to the Second World War. But there was a very strong view that USA should not get involved in the wars of Europe and should stay out of Europe. Interestingly, even after Pearl Harbor was bombed on December 7th, 1941, uh, Roosevelt uh, urged Congress, and obviously had no problems in getting Congress, both the House and the Senate, to pass a declaration of war uh, against Japan, with one Senator Jeanette Rankin of Montana voting against, who was a pacifist, voting against the resolution. But Roosevelt had no chance of passing a resolution even then, even after Pearl Harbor, of um, of a declaration of war against Germany. And it was Hitler's folly, and fortunately for the world, that on 11th of December, even though 1941, even though he was not required to, Hitler and Germany declared war on the USA. So Roosevelt did not have to push Congress for getting involved in that in a war against Germany and Nazism. Now, the comparison of that and against what's the GOP's attitude towards Ukraine, and what is their view of an isolationist America, where America doesn't support NATO, where America doesn't care about Russian aggression, where America only protects its own borders, is a terrifying um, uh, sort of scenario for the world, where you have got um, on one hand China and Russia, and on the other hand you've got an, a fairly autocratic USA, and NATO is terribly weakened, and that was on the verge of happening towards the during the during Trump's presidency already, and essentially globalization becomes dead, where America turns inward and does not care what happens in the world. What type of a world would we face if that did happen? What sort of impact will it have on the economy, economies globally, if America turned inwards and 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 became more isolationist as a result of the GOP taking power with some very extreme elements, mix of QAnon and extreme right wing uh, reactionaries in power, and who refuse to believe in any sort of free and fair transfer of power, other than a reality where their candidates have won, whether genuinely or not, by um, by not counting mail-in votes, or by not, or accusing the opposition of without any basis election fraud, etc. So um, the, it's a very worrying situation of what's happening in America, and for us in Australia, it's important that um, we are somewhat aware of what is happening, because it will have consequences in how we get involved in uh, as a part of the ANZUS treaty, in any sort of military engagements, for example. um, if there was an invasion of Taiwan, and what and all of that in the context of an autocratic um, government, potentially in power in the US, what that looks like in terms of any such conflagration or confrontation. Now, I don't have any answers to any of this, but I thought it's important. I feel strongly enough about it and worry about it enough to um, make this video, to share some of my knowledge of what's happening in the US. I have family in the US and colleagues also that are equally concerned about what's happening, and democracy is a tenuous thing. Uh, Everywhere across the globe, we have seen the democracy is a tenuous thing a lot of the time, and one does not realize what one have for democracy, what one takes for granted, till it is lost and till it's too late. Uh, and while comparisons to Nazism and Hitler and what happened to the 1930s are always there, but how fascism evolves or what autocracy looks like is different at different ages and different times. But at the same time, um, there is that possibility that sometimes we may not be aware till very late that what is happening and what impact or consequence that has even on us far away in Australia as a result um, of an upheaval in the political system in the US. Thank you.